Have you ever had one of those moments where you're sitting in a room full of people your own age, and yet you feel like you've lived 3 lifetimes more than everyone else? Someone is complaining about something small, laughing loudly, chasing trends, and you're just there, quietly thinking, why do I feel so old? Not old in a tired body way, old in a soul way, like your internal clock is running on a completely different calendar. What's strange is that society tells you how old you should feel. You're taught that youth equals energy, spontaneity, and carefreeness. That maturity comes later, slowly, in neat stages. But psychology paints a very different picture. Some people don't grow older gradually. They skip emotional steps. They age internally at a faster rate, and if that's you, there's a reason for it. Several, actually. Let me paint a familiar scene. You're the one people come to for advice, even though you never signed up for that role. Friends talk, you listen. Family leans, you steady. And somewhere along the way, you realize that you don't relate to your peers the way you're supposed to. You think about consequences. You read between the lines. You feel responsible for things that technically aren't your job. You've always been this way. And sometimes you wonder if something is wrong with you. Here's the first truth that rarely gets talked about. Feeling older than your age is often not about age at all. It's about time. Not clock time, but psychological time, the kind of time your brain has spent processing stress, responsibility, and emotional complexity. Psychologists sometimes talk about something called subjective age. It's the age you feel rather than the one on your ID, and studies consistently show that subjective age can differ wildly from chronological age. Some 40-year-olds feel 25, some 22-year-olds feel 50. The difference isn't maturity points or intelligence, it's experience density. How much life has been compressed into you early? If you had to grow up fast, your brain learned to adapt fast. And adaptation leaves a mark. Imagine childhood as a training ground. For some people, it's a playground. For others, it's an obstacle course. If you were the kid who had to be the calm one, the strong one, or the responsible one, your nervous system learned early that safety depends on awareness, on control, on thinking ahead. Your brain became less about play and more about prediction. Neuroscience shows us that when a young brain is exposed to frequent stress or responsibility, the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, becomes more active. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment and long-term thinking, gets very good at its job very early. That combination creates someone who feels mentally older because they are constantly scanning, evaluating, and regulating. You didn't get extra years, you gain extra weight per year. This is why people who feel older than their age often struggle with being in the moment. Their mind is always a few steps ahead. While others are enjoying the party, you're noticing the dynamics. Who's uncomfortable? What could go wrong? When it's time to leave, it's not pessimism, it's pattern recognition on overdrive. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Feeling older isn't always about hardship. Sometimes it comes from depth. Some people are born with higher emotional sensitivity. Their brains process information more deeply. Sounds feel louder, emotions feel stronger, meanings run deeper. Psychologists call this depth of processing, and it's associated with higher empathy and introspection. When you process life deeply, you don't skim experiences, you absorb them. Think of it like this. Some people read life like a headline. You read it like a novel. Same number of years, very different word count. This is why you might feel out of sync. Conversations feel shallow. Small talk feels exhausting. You crave meaning, context, and honesty, and when those aren't available, you retreat inward. Not because you're antisocial, but because your brain is wired for substance. There's also a quieter reason people feel older than their age, and it doesn't get enough attention. Grief, not always the dramatic kind. Sometimes it's invisible grief, the loss of safety, the loss of innocence, the loss of who you thought you'd be. When loss happens early, your internal narrative changes. You become aware of impermanence sooner. You understand that things end, that people change, that stability isn't guaranteed, that awareness is often mistaken for wisdom, but it's really early realism. And realism ages you. People who feel older often think they're broken because they don't feel light enough. But psychology suggests something else. You're not heavier, you're just more aware of gravity. There's also the social angle. If you've ever felt like you don't belong in your age group, you're not imagining it. Research shows that people with older subjective ages often feel socially displaced. You might gravitate toward older friends, or you might prefer solitude, or you might feel lonely even in groups. That's because belonging isn't about age, it's about tempo. Your emotional tempo is slower, more deliberate. While others move quickly from feeling to feeling, you linger. You reflect, you integrate, and that can be isolating in a culture that celebrates speed. Let's talk about the humor in this, because there is some. You might be the 23-year-old with a favorite mug, a strict bedtime, and a deep appreciation for silence. You might get more excited about canceling plans than making them. You might hear gossip and think, I don't have the energy for this. People joke that you're an old soul, and you smile, but inside you're thinking, I didn't ask for this. Here's the reframe most people never hear. Feeling older than your age isn't a flaw. It's a form of psychological compression. You've processed more meaning per moment. And yes, that can come with heaviness, but it also comes with clarity. You tend to see through illusions faster. You recognize unhealthy patterns sooner. You value peace over performance, depth over noise, authenticity over approval. The danger isn't feeling older. The danger is believing that because you feel older, your life is already behind you. Psychologically, that's the trap. When your internal age runs ahead of your body, you might unconsciously rush life. Skip joy, skip risk, skip curiosity. You might tell yourself, I've seen enough, when really you've just seen early. The work isn't to become younger, it's to rebalance. To let your mind rest sometimes. To let your nervous system experience safety without responsibility. To remind yourself that awareness doesn't mean obligation. You're allowed to be deep and playful, thoughtful and spontaneous. Interestingly, studies show that people who accept their subjective age instead of fighting it tend to have better mental health outcomes. They stop trying to perform youth or maturity. They simply live from where they are. And when that happens, something surprising occurs. The heaviness softens. Not because life becomes simpler, but because you stop carrying more than is yours. If you feel older than your age, it doesn't mean you're done growing. It means you started understanding earlier. And understanding is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of choice. You can choose to use that depth to build a life that fits you, not one that matches a timeline you never agreed to. You can choose relationships that meet you where you are, work that values insight over urgency, moments that allow you to exhale. So the next time you catch yourself feeling ancient in a room full of youth, pause. Ask yourself a gentler question. Not, what's wrong with me? But, what has my mind already lived through? Chances are the answer isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to understand. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experience. When did you first notice that you felt older than your age? Was it always there, or did something change it? Share your thoughts, and if you want to keep exploring the psychology behind the way your mind works, you know where to find me.